Welcome to Trans Fabulous. My name is Sasja Sÿdek, and I am the founder of Trans Sisters United, the familiar voice at Querying the Air at 3CR and also Everybody Eats at Joy 94.9 FM. And before I start, I would like to acknowledge that we are working on the stolen land, the Wurundjeri people, the Kulin Nation. I pay my respect to the elders past, present, and emerging, always was and always will be Aboriginal land. Today, I have a very special guest, a dear friend of mine, Vivienne. Vivienne, they, them pronouns, is CEO of Transgender Victoria, a peak advocacy organization and well-being focused, not-for-profit led by and for trans and gender diverse communities. San has a background in film, media production, and research writing, teaching in academia. They came from white working class roots in far north Queensland and regional South Australia. San is neurodiverse and non-binary and parent to grown and growing kids. Some of San's special interests include categorizing data, gardening, bees, dogs, and building shelters. Welcome, San.
Thank you, Sasha.
Wait, what is categorizing data?
I know I wrote that bio, right?
Mm-hmm.
But it's always a surprise to hear other people read it. It's very odd.
Yeah.
Categorizing data is actually a little bit of the things we were talking about earlier, how we count ourselves as community and make ourselves visible in systems and services that need to deliver to us. It's about any of the systems that count who we are.
Yeah, it sounds like you trying to organize a spreadsheet.
It's very, I love that too. I love a spreadsheet. It can be organizing socks in your drawer, you know, like any kind of, it's a ordering of things and of stories. So it's all about the structure and the order of the things that you put together.
That. I love that. I love everything in order as well. I think I have a bit of OCD. It's just having been diagnosed.
I am actually not the tidiest person, but so maybe that's where the desire to sort and like to, you know, impose some sense of organization on it is.
Okay. I want to start off with you from North Queensland and also you said from South Adelaide.
So in my grandparents' generation, my granddad was a mango farmer and used to breed pig dogs.
Okay.
I remember, you know, hanging out there as a tiny person in his back shed. He used to drink homebrew beer out of Tupperware, like those long, you know, that we drink smoothies out of now.
Yeah.
He was a funny old man. Very racist. And, you know, I think that part of my journey, and more recently actually having biological and chosen Aboriginal family, Arrernte and Ngarrindjeri, really navigating those deep values that are partly learned and, you know, from family and then learned through education and the world that you move in. And I think as a queer person, I've always had a sense of being outside or other, you know, not in that main category.
Yeah.
So it's interesting just thinking about that journey from that history and then, you know, the kind of tensions that were really evident in the discussion around The Voice last year. The vast gaps of differences in my family, I think maybe has supported me in becoming the kind of person who really needs to try and translate those differences and to try and help one side understand the other side or understand the judgments that they're making that inform their values.
I can relate to that because I come from Singapore. It's a racist country, trust me. And if I actually don't live outside of Singapore, I'd probably be one of them because it's those internalized racism that people don't actually notice. When I moved here and I know that was racist and it just confirmed that the things that's happening in Singapore are racist. And to be honest, I'm tired of educating people, especially when they come here and using all those discrimination, derogatory words, describing people. And I just don't like that.
I mean, it's actually one of the things that riffing on categorization again, you know, I guess as humans, we have those labels for identities and we claim them ourselves too, right? To help sort of understand and make meaning of one another. but they more often than not actually contain people in exclusionary, they push away as well as they make visible. So there's two sides of that discussion around identities, I think, and that they often come with judgment and assumptions about what that category means.
How did you got involved with, I guess, advocacy? With the LGBT community. Did you start off in Queensland?
No, so I actually only I lived there until I was 7.
Okay.
My dad was in the Air Force, and we moved to Adelaide when I was 7. So the majority of my young years were, or that I can remember, were actually in Eden Hills, in the foothills in Adelaide.
Yeah.
I spent a lot of time climbing trees, and I always had pet chickens. No surprise, many, many years later, to work out that I'm actually neurodivergent on the autism spectrum. I very much preferred creatures over people.
Yeah.
I was very shy and very, I think back, if I had an option, I would have been invisible. That would have been my superpower. I've been thinking obsessively about the word fabulous since you asked me about probably 5 months ago. And I actually even looked it up in terms of dictionary definition today.
Yeah.
So there's multiple meanings, and one of them is fabulous, like unlikely to be true. Like that's a fabulous myth or a fabulous.
I don't know that one.
Yeah. That's one of the kind of older meanings, I guess. Yeah. And then there's fabulous being very pleasing. And I think that's such an interesting thing too, because I was really raised to be very pleasing, to be a people pleaser, to be quiet, to not make a fuss. Yeah. And so, we've kind of appropriated it as queers. I think of fabulous as you. Yeah. I think of, it sparkles and, being proud and being happy to be in the spotlight. And I have to say, even, I'm a very introspective person. I think it's a stretch for me to feel comfortable in those spaces. Yeah. And it's taken me a long time to learn how to feel okay.
So you're not the only one.
No.
It took me years as well to feel fabulous, because I used to be a very quiet person too. Yeah. But I think it's all those traumas, being bullied and stuff. It toughened me up, and I just have to own it and love myself more. Yeah. And why I created this Trans Fabulous series, because I want to change the dynamic of trans people, instead of always talking about their traumas and that all those things. And people hardly talk about their achievements, and I want to do that and create this space where we can celebrate trans individuals like yourself.
I think it's a lot of the stuff that Transgender Victoria is starting to do now is, less focused on the deficit advocacy that, of course, we're always dragged back into. Correct. Because it's not an easy world for us to live in. But we can celebrate how excellent we are too. Yeah. And, the fact that I'd say that all of us have a sense of being able to have affinity with difference and recognise, beauty in things that are often pushed to the edges and the margins. Yeah. And that is fabulous. It's also a survival strategy. It's a really, resilience is a tricky word as well in terms of what that actually means and how you get there. But I think the capacity to be able to see the silver lining in something that otherwise is quite oppressive or I sort of jokingly say that we thank the neo-Nazis and the TERFs for some crisis funding that we actually got last year that enabled us to open a drop-in space called Affirmation Station. And, so you go, okay, that's the silver lining. It was hideous at the time. We took months to get, many people are still not over the trauma, and it's still there just under the surface, but we can say, that happened. Yeah. The world exists in ways that are not kind. Let's actually work out how to be strong in and bold and brave in opposition to that.
You're so right over there, because that's how I live, because there's so much things, especially I transitioned in the 90s, and there's so much discrimination, and you get beaten up in the back alley and stuff. But you know what, because of my resilience, I guess, that I have to get up and I have to live again the next day. Opening up about the Affirming Center by Transgender Victoria is amazing, where a lot of trans people can get help there, or information even. They open for families as well?
Our core mission, I guess, is around connection, caring, the capacity to celebrate and to empower. So
Yeah.
we don't, we work with Transcend, who do a lot more work
Yes.
with parents and families and young people. We don't want to sort of take over any one of the worlds that we walk in.
You don't want to create your enemy.
But that connecting between organisations that are also doing really good work, and, as a trans person, you don't care what the name of the door is when you need help. You just need it to be open in a way that, supports who you are. So that means also, doing work in incarceration systems and doing work with and against police and, really, I guess, thinking around all of those intersections of where people get left out. We can afford, I guess, to look at those intersections while we're connecting people back to some of the mainstream LGBTQI plus community spaces.
So, Son, you are the CEO of Transgender Victoria. How long has it been?
So I've been in CEO role for about just over a year now. The last time I was on this show was I noticed I was COO, so that was Chief Operations Officer.
Yeah.
I've been with Transgender Victoria 5 or 6 years now.
Okay.
So yeah.
Yeah.
And certainly it's changed so much in that time.
Because you have film background, right?
Yes,
and why did you change into advocacy?
They're not unrelated. You asked before, actually, and we got off topic about, what got me into advocacy. Like when I was a young person trying to work out what kind of like university or study space that I wanted, like I wanted to do something. Actually, even in high school, I was interested in storytelling and photography and film production. So that kind of became my first degree, and I've got to my... I'm not sure if it's shame or credit, 3 degrees. I've got 2 BAs.
Oh, wow.
So a bar.
Yes.
And then a PhD. And
they're fabulous.
They're all focused in, like when you look back, you can see the thread between these pathways. They're all really interested in how stories can be shared in public spaces where it can be really stigmatising to share the stories. So back before marriage equality, my PhD project was around queer online advocacy, and I worked with lots of families who wanted to tell the stories of their kids with pride, but were really scared about what the ramifications would be for the kids. That they might get bullied at school. It was back in the era of That's So Gay. So the storytelling and the queer identity and the change the world by persuading people, helping them see other perspectives that's the through line.
All right, now it makes sense from film to advocacy because it matched anyway. So have you produced any short films or films?
Yep.
What about recently?
Nothing recently other than one. How funny is this that you just made me realise that one of the reasons I think I got into directing was I didn't want to be in front of the camera.
Okay, why?
Because here I am. Today. It's like these are the only kind of films I'm involved in now, is the ones where I'm in front of the camera.
I agree. I can relate to this because I've been working in the fashion industry for a very long time. I just studied fashion, and I just did a debut with Global Indigenous Runway. So just a couple of weeks ago, and that was daunting. And they told us not to smile, and we all looked so serious, and that was an experience, but I enjoyed it. But now I know the difference. Like I'm always the back scene.
When you're in front of the camera, you don't necessarily have the control over how the story is edited or presented or how it's framed in the world of media. Whereas directing or producing, and for me it was about empowering people to tell their stories, but to have some agency around where those stories then travelled and were shared. And, if you change your mind at some point down the track and you don't want that story to be online, then how you can tell a story so that it's less identifiable or pseudonymous, is it, so that, for example, the parent of a trans kid, an under 18, worked to tell a story about the pride in their child without identifying their child, who may wish to not identify as trans. They were affirmed as a young person, so they may wish to just be in the world as a heteronormative, and that's okay. So having some agency over those stories are things that you kind of need to have a little bit of behind the scenes knowledge and control to be able to, or else you come into spaces where you know the people and trust the people in terms of how they'll share your story.
Oh, amazing. And is there any project coming up with, directing a film, or are you writing
in my spare time? I am actually writing, but
Okay.
so this was, I'm writing fiction now.
Okay.
This was my
your book.
finishing. Oh goodness, this was like really the only reason I finished this was tail end of academia, then COVID.
Yeah.
Left me with some work at home time.
Yeah.
And I would get up very early in the morning before doing Transgender Victoria work and finish writing this book. And I felt that I really needed to finish the book, even though it had kind of no kudos in terms of academia anymore, because there were so many core interviews in it with people who had been so brave in sharing how they facilitate safe enough spaces, that I just needed to, get it between a hardcover and get it out into the world. So
can you tell us a bit about the book?
Is really troubling the idea that any space can be guaranteed to be safe for everyone. I argue, even through the history of safe spaces, that the idea is really something that's been premised on white male privilege and power. They're the only people who've ever felt the right to be safe. We can claim that right and aspire to that desire to be safe in the world, but guaranteeing it is a recipe for disaster in terms of, if you're a marginalised person, a person of colour, if you're a queer person or a disabled person, the lack of access to safety on an ongoing basis means that when you're told that a space is safe and then it becomes unsafe, which can happen even internally, you can just be having a bad day and you don't feel good, or somebody can come into the room who's, makes you feel threatened. That crashing down of expectations can be just completely, re-traumatizing and triggering of all our scars. So I really try to talk about what it takes to hold a space in a way that allows people to be brave and to acknowledge that sometimes it is uncomfortable to be brave, and that you actually kind of need to take responsibility for your own ability to withdraw or say, no, I don't like this, I can't do this anymore. And how we as facilitators or organisations or people even in relationships, how can we open up those spaces so that people can be really what they want to be, rather than us telling them how they should be safe.
Like myself in the past, I do things that I didn't want to do because I was scared of for my safety. If I didn't do it, then I'll probably get I don't know, you know. So
and you can beat yourself up about that, which is again, that's like, it's not your fault that you didn't feel safe.
I know.
It's the world is not a safe place.
How do people get this book?
So it's a very expensive academic book. So we will try and put in the comment sections of the video the discount code so you can order it that way. But more important, ask your local library.
Local libraries?
Librarians love it when people actually engage and say, please, I want to read this book. Can you buy it? 90% of the time they do. Okay. And then it makes it available to other people after you've finished having a look too.
It's a collective as well, isn't it?
So I interview 15 different people, ranging from, tattoo artists through to sex play parties, the Commissioner of LGBTQI plus communities. Some of my very precious friends who are Aboriginal and were teaching in academic systems, so talking about that precarious kind of where you have to speak from lived experience, but you're not really supported by the system in terms of when you're challenged by ignorance. So lots of different interesting case studies that are, I think, the gold in it. But there's also some, a little spreadsheet with some quick tips for things to think about.
I read on your bio, you said bees and gardening. So what, you have bees at home? I do.
Oh,
so bees is your pet?
Bees, they kind of can't be Yeah, they're not pets. They certainly let you know if you're not engaging with them in the world in a way that they like.
Okay.
I guess it's you're more a custodian of bees. You do need to care for them. I'm constantly learning more things. I'm so much in my head so often that my coming back into my body is about getting muddy in the garden, seeing slow change in the environment, seeing things grow or die when the heat is what it has been. And just seeing, I love to just sit in the backyard and just
I love
watch
gardening.
them.
I mean, this is fairly new interest for me. I've never liked gardening in the past because I didn't think that I have green thumb, but I see things growing.
Yeah,
and
it tunes your eye
yeah,
into it,
it's
doesn't it? And
changing
then
now. I have like jalapeno plant. I have
fantastic.
mango trees. I got it's all from scratch, from the seed. I don't even have a backyard. It's like a balcony.
Again, I think in terms of life skills, like these are the things sometimes it takes a few years. Like I'm a lot older than a lot of other people.
No, you're not.
But I think, learning that just trying, experimenting, being curious, failing, all of these things. Gardening is very good for all of these things.
Oh, definitely. It's very therapeutic.
And then when you're out in the world too, you notice that, like I notice bees everywhere now that I would never have.
Have you ever get stung by the bees?
Yes. Like normally, it all depends on the mood of the queen.
Okay.
You can have a cranky queen, and the solution to that is to kill that cranky queen and get a happy queen, because that affects the mood of everybody else.
So there's a few queens.
No, there's only one.
One queen.
But if you've got a mean one, everybody else will be mean as well. So I've got quite a gentle queen, and so the bees are generally very happy. Like they don't, they don't sting generally.
Do you have any other interest?
The building shelter part is about, I've got a rusty old caravan that is parked in the backyard paddock of a friend's place up near Bacchus Marsh, and I try and get up there most weekends to do a little bit of work on restoring the, it's a paddock, it's very barren. So planting some plants, trying to keep them alive, trying to catch the water to, it's all off grid.
Now that you are CEO at Transgender Victoria, are you saying, are you gonna have more big more big plans?
I'd like to stay for long enough to have a really smooth sailing ship. It's been a lot of wobbly years getting to this point, and we're still growing very fast. We don't have stable ongoing funding, so that it's really my job to diversify our funding sources so that we can keep doing the stuff we're doing. And I guess just really support community and feeling like it's an organisation for them rather than, there was a misperception, I think, early in the day that we were advocacy and government oriented in some way, and peer support is really our key. It's
good
about
for clarification.
The peer support component, the empowering trans people to be able to support one another. So it's for, with and by trans people to be able to celebrate and just, and regardless of whether you're on a linear medical affirmation pathway too. There's so many young people now who, don't necessarily want that pathway. They just want to be gender expansive. And, I just want to have a space that can celebrate that and have it stable enough that I can hand it over with confidence.
You're a great leader. So, that's how I see it anyway. You always put everybody first, and what trans people need. Like Trans United, we have the sisterhood thing going. So we always support each other. So I guess Transgender Victoria is the same thing as well. Yeah.
If I'm fabulous, it's because around me, people, like I feel like I can help people be fabulous. So that's the, if you have that shared vibe, that's great. That's fabulous.
That.
I've a 15-year-old and a 22-year-old.
Yes.
The 22-year-old is living up in Sydney. So my plan is to get them to a stage. They've just come out as non-binary. They have a lovely trans girlfriend. I love that they ring me up and ask for money. But I would love it if they were ringing me up just to say, hi, I'm fabulous, a bit more often and not so stressed about money.
I know this.
Yeah, and then the 15-year-old, I would just like to get through to the end of high school with. Like we're on pretty good terms now.
Okay.
It's, I know it can be very hit and miss for the last few years
kids,
from experience.
So
that's my plan, is to survive that with some degree of equanimity. Bees, dog, caravan, CEO. Yeah, that'll do.
What about a second book?
Well, I'm working. Yeah, I've got a little fiction idea that maybe started as a film back in the day.
Start with a film and then become a book?
Yeah.
Wow.
I could never get money to get it made because it's a bit too dark, I think, a bit too queer.
Yeah.
So I kind of gave up on getting money to get it made, and I'm just going to write it as a fiction piece.
Well, if you need some backup crews, just ask
me. Yep.
I've
starring
done,
role.
Film setting before in the past, so I do have a resume.
We are doing more media stuff in Transgender Victoria spaces to really support people to share their stories with the world. So that'll be a big piece in the next year.
Do you have any wishes to our young siblings?
I look back to what I was like, as a teenager and young adult, and I was so anxious and angsty about everything. And it's such a cliche to say that it'll be okay, but and still it's not always okay. It's a roller coaster, right? So for me, still I have bad days where I don't want to get out of bed. I would just, I guess, share those ideas around, you don't have to be happy all the time to be a fabulous human being, and connect with your mates and make some plans for the other side of the bad day. That'll help you get out of bed, and recognize that it's okay. It'll be okay. We're here for you.
And thank you so much for being on Trans Fabulous.
Thank you.
Thank you for watching Trans Fabulous, and we'll see you again on the next episode.